Okay, welcome back. Good to see you. Actually, I wrote myself a couple notes here because a couple things I want to say something about. I understand that some people came to Carla to express their disagreement with the idea of ending the meetings at an hour and a half. Expressing the view that they wanted more time with me, which is really quite a shock to me, since the last time anybody other than Carla wanted real more time with me, it was a federal judge in the U.S. Bureau of Prisons. But actually, I had settled on an hour and a half, and that's an hour of me yakking and a half hour of questions, because I thought that those long meetings were too great a burden on you guys. I'm always happy to be with you, and always happy to be in conversation with you. So let's call it 2 hours, and see what happens. Okay. Another thing that apparently was also part of the delegation's suggestions were they regretted the absence of the evening meetings. In the past, during these retreats, we would have, for the 3 full days, we would have 2 meetings in the day and then another meeting in the evening with a third of the people who were at the retreat just coming up here and sitting in a circle and talking informally. And the reason we did away with that was because of me, because it just got to be too much for me. I would end up after the retreats just completely, it would take me a week to recover. So not having the evening meetings gives me a chance to get a good full night's sleep at night and still have some juice at the end of the retreat to attend to the normal business that I have to take care of. So I'm not going to reinstate those because I just can't do it. It's just too much for me. We will, however, last time we did this, and in all likelihood we will, and this is kind of in the same vein as those meetings, in that it allows for quick questions and not having to come up with the full Monty here, and the lights and stuff. Sometime, at some meeting, sometime before the retreat is over, we will probably have a kind of an open mic where people can come up to the mic and with quick questions, and we can just work it back and forth. So that should fill some of the things that the evening meetings used to take care of. And lastly, and this in my notes, and this is more substantive than those kind of scheduling things and so forth. Someone suggested that it would be good to start or end each meeting with the same kind of guided enactment of the practice as we did this morning. And I really don't see the point in that. The act is not, the act is only the means. And once you have a sense of what I'm talking about, having to do with the act and what the actual action of inward looking entails, the fact that you have attention and you can focus it and you can move it, looking for whatever it is you're trying to look for, that's the looking I'm speaking of, movement of the focused beam of attention. And once you have that straight in your mind as to what the means are for doing the act, which itself is the means, then it's kind of up to you. And the truth is that the way in which these psychologies operate is entirely idiosyncratic. So the truth is that once the suggestion is heard clearly enough for you to attempt doing it, you're kind of on your own. You know, you really have to figure out how to do this for yourself. And there's and I'm not saying that this suggestion had any taste of this whatsoever in it, but there's always a tendency to want to fetishize these kind of things and to make the kind of practice itself the thing that we're doing and the thing that we're trying to, that's the thing that's going to bring us happiness and peace of mind. It's a kind of a fetishizing. And in this case, that is entirely off base, because the act is of no consequence or significance whatsoever in its own right. There's nothing to it that gives you anything or takes anything away from you, the act itself. And and it's also true, whether you know it or not, the act is a means to an end. It's a way of curing the disease. It's a way that has no particular significance on its own. It just happens to be the case that this act cures the disease. It's like if we made a big thing out of antibiotics, right? We made, antibiotics, oh yes, let me take more antibiotics because the antibiotics are the thing that fixed me up. Then we'd get really sick of antibiotics, sickened by antibiotics. And the actual case is, whether you know it or not, that there is really, literally, not a single second of conscious life in which what it feels like to be you is not present in your awareness. It's not that it's hard to find. You're everywhere. Anywhere you look. You know, I say to look inward, and what I mean by looking inward is not looking to me or to the light stand here, right? But to look inward into the content of your mind. Nothing especially spiritual about it. It's all mechanical. And the only reason for the need that we have to particularize the act of inward looking and to make it a thing that we do deliberately is because, lost as we are in the fog of neurotic insanity that the fear of life has bestowed upon us, we have lost sight of what it feels like to be me. Here all the time, but lost sight of. There's things that are much more important to us than this. And the presence of the experience of you is overlooked because the experience of you is not very, as I continue to say, there's not much to it. It doesn't give anything to see it. The whole point of attention is not to bring it to rest in the experience of you. The whole point of attention is to experience life as it unfolds, and to be able to do so in a way that allows us to skillfully navigate the life, assuming a basis of sanity to begin with. So, for all those reasons, I really don't see much point in making a thing out of doing this guided practice at all. If anybody has serious questions or objections about that, let me know and we'll talk about it some more, but I'm pretty firm on that. It just doesn't make sense to me. You've got to do it by yourself, you see. Like even when we did it this morning, when we did it together, each individual person here did it in a solitary moment of inner awareness. It is the movement of your attention that is the means to this, and only you are familiar with the quirkiness and the way in which your psychology has developed your relationship with that beam of attention and how to work with it and so forth. So you got to figure it out for yourself. Once I tell you what to do, you got to figure it out for yourself. And you will. Because it's you, for God's sake. It's not, it's not Buddha mind. It's not universal consciousness. It's you. Always here. Never absent. The one thing that never changes in your entire experience. The one thing that never changes. And of course, this little thing that we did this morning will at some point be out there in the world anyway, and you can listen to it to your heart's content if you want to. Any questions about any of that? Okay. The other reason for shortening the meetings to an hour and a half is because I have so little to say. It used to be that I used to joke about me being like Fidel Castro or Khrushchev or one of those guys with the talent to speak for hours and hours, or the affliction, whichever. But as it has become clear to me exactly what it is that has to be done, and it become clear to me that it's my job to become more direct and plain speaking and clear about the act itself, there's very little that I have to say anymore. I mean, I can talk. God knows I can talk. But there's very little I have to say of any consequence. I talk about the fear of life. Anything you want me to talk about? Anybody have something they'd like to hear me talk about? No?
I'd like to hear a little bit more about what you were talking about this morning about when you look at yourself, somehow it's the part that you're protecting or something. I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. So.
Okay. And you?
It was going to be a question, but maybe you could clarify this a little bit for me. The subtle difference between emptiness and looking at oneself.
Okay, we have one. Somebody wants to know what I meant by you're looking at that which you're trying to protect, right?
Yeah.
And you wanted me to talk a little bit about the difference between emptiness and me, I guess, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Here's the thing about the business about you're looking at what you're trying to protect. And I don't think I've ever actually put it that way before. It just popped into my mind and came out of my mouth without too much consideration. But it does actually strike me as being very apt for a couple reasons. One is the simple, plain fact that you are perceived to be the entity that requires the protection of endless vigilance and evaluation of all rising phenomena. That's that you're the one that's being protected by that activity. That's exactly what you are. Now, like I talked to, was it Liz I was talking to about that? Yeah, and I talked to Liz about that. It was interesting that she had heard that or acted on it as if it were the kind of cluster of infantile insecurities and need for reassurance and things of that nature, because that seems to be the thing that wants to be protected. But I'm not asking you to look at the thing that wants to be protected. I'm asking you to look at the thing that is being protected by all of this hypervigilance and evaluation and, figuring out this and that, the other thing. It's not the one that wants to be protected. Now, there was a time, and this is interesting, I'm actually glad you brought this up. There was a time when I used to advise people, and this was in a time when I was still struggling mightily to see my way through the fog of my own understandings and so forth. But there was a time when I used to advise people to, and I did this because of my own experience. And my own experience, of course, started from no idea at all what I was doing. Well, I used to advise people to find within themselves this kind of knot of neediness and insecurity and infantile dependency and so forth and so on. And I used to advise them to find that knot of insecurity and infantilism and focus on it with great vigor. And I did that because that had been effective for me in the period of time when I was without any idea of how to recover from the collapse of my enlightenment, my so-called enlightenment, and had turned to try to understand. And I don't know, I'm gonna relate this to you guys. Probably most of you have heard it before, and maybe all of you have heard it before, but you're going to hear it again in this context because it makes sense. I spent a year and a half in a state of a constant kind of, I guess, awareness of non-dual consciousness. A year and a half of no sense of any identity, no sense of anything other than the wonder of it all. No sense of real time passing or anything of the kind. That collapsed, and the circumstances that surrounded its collapse are beside the point. But that collapsed and left me bereft, and really in a state of torment and agony and regret and so forth and so on. I decided that during that period of time, coming out of that, and in that torment, I decided that that what I needed to do was not find a way to reclaim the state of what I had so fondly called enlightenment, not try to reclaim that, to get back to that, but that itself was false and a false promise, and what I really had to do was find a way to destroy within me all hope whatsoever that there was anything to be done about the the basic stupidity and brutishness of human life. That I wanted to destroy all hope. And for whatever reason, and it's not necessary that this makes sense to the one who is listening to it, because it made sense to the tormented, crazy person here when I did it. I decided that Ramana Maharshi, I'm sure you've all heard of Ramana Maharshi, that Ramana Maharshi was unique among the gurus and teachers and so forth that I had read, and God knows I had read a whole lot of stuff about that. And that he was unique for a number of reasons, and I'm not going to go into them in detail right now. But one of the reasons was because it seemed to me that consistently, although it often seemed to be buried in spiritual lingo and spiritual context and so forth, that he consistently had something that he wanted us to do. There was something he wanted us to do, and I couldn't figure out what it was from just what he was saying. What he was saying was, who? Who are you? For whom is this joy? For whom is this misery? For whom is this confusion? Who are you? And that didn't make any sense to me. I knew who I was, after all. I was infinite eternal consciousness, unhampered by any who-ness at all. But I thought that since Ramana was, for one thing, recent, he hadn't been dead as long as most of them had been dead, and for another thing was unique in the history of the development of his own realization, and unique in the way that he was received by the other spiritual teachers of his time, which was with hostility and antagonism. That's how he was greeted by them. I decided that I would turn to the act that Ramana, I knew that he wanted us to do something, and that who wasn't it. That was just the way it came out. But there was something behind that who am I that was fundamental and profound, and that if I could find what it was that he actually wanted us to do, I would find it to be false and be done with hope. It seemed obvious to me that the whole business of hope for salvation or reconciliation or redemption or anything of the kind was just made up, just, some story we tell like Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. So I thought that if I could find what Ramana, because he had an act, he clearly had an act that he wanted us to perform. And I thought that if I could find what Ramana wanted us to do and do it, then I could rid myself of this foolishness and get back to, getting high and trying to get money and trying to be the king of the world and things of that nature. And I spent considerable amount of time. I had a considerable amount of time because I was in prison and didn't have to work and so forth. And I spent a considerable amount of time reading talks, the thick, red-covered talks. And one of the things that Ramana suggested in the course of his attempt to explain to us what it was that happened to him, one of the things that Ramana suggested was that and this, by the way, is one of the things that attracted me to Ramana, was that we should grab ego by the throat. And this was so, sacrilegious or something, to somebody steeped in non-dual understanding and Advaita Vedanta teachings and so forth, that somebody of his stature could suggest that there was such a thing as ego, whose throat could be grabbed and strangled. That I started to do that myself. One of the things I did with great energy and conviction. And I would sit on my bunk and I would try to find that knot of neediness and blame and hurt and desire and wanting something, that infantile, the baby thing. And I would try to find some sensation within my consciousness, my body, of course, that answered to that name, to that set of characteristics, which of course is easy to do. If you start looking for it, I guarantee you'll find it. You conjure it up in the act of looking for it, right? So I would find something like that or conjure it up, and I would fix it with the beam of my attention, the death ray of my attention, and I would mutter to it, die, die, die. And then after, I suppose weeks of doing that many times during the day, I did it once and it occurred to me, well, this thing ain't never going to die. And I laughed and moved on. But then, later on, when I'm trying to, now I'm out here, meeting with folks like you and knowing that there's something I really want to get across and I don't exactly know how to do it, but I have on occasion suggested to people that one thing that can be done is to do that, to find what feels like ego, to find what feels like the infantile, childish, spoiled brat that thinks that mommy isn't taking care of it and wants more and isn't getting what it wants and so forth, and focus your attention on that. And the truth is that if you focus your attention on any arising phenomena within your mind, if you focus your attention on it, it'll disappear. It's just the case. It's like dissolving clouds. So if you focus your attention on that, it will disappear. And I suggested to people, so I thought, that when it disappears, what you'll be looking at is you. In that second, in that split second. I have since come to see that indirection is not worth doing, since the direct approach to it is so available to everybody and so easy to do. I mean, easy from my point of view, maybe not from yours, but is so easy to do since it's just you, that it has become really clear to me that those kind of means that are indirect are a waste of our time. And as human beings, we only have so much time. So when I talk about the one who you are trying to protect, I'm talking about you and not that little knot of infantile neediness and so forth. There's nothing wrong with looking at that, but that's indirect, and it seems to me, and this is from experience of my own and also with the reports of many, many people now, it seems to me that a critical element of this act, a critical element of its effectiveness and the speed with which it actually accomplishes what you intended to accomplish, is the clarity of your own intent. There's something about the intent that seems to be extremely powerful in this act. So that if you have the intent, for example, of finding self, you're going to be a long time looking for what I want you to see. Or if you have the intent of finding emptiness, for example, it's going to be a long time before you ever stumble upon what it is that I'm trying to get you to actually get a taste of, or any other abstraction having to do with you. If you're looking for who am I, also, it's going to take a long time before that who can conceivably lead you to the actual experience of the reality of you, here, now, in this moment. And it's that intent, and the intent to see the person, what it feels like to be a person, not what it feels like to be all the problems and the conflictions and the psychological disabilities that attend personhood for most of us, but what it actually feels like to be person. That's the clearest intent, the cleanest intent, that leads you most directly to what it is that I want you to look at. You call that experience me. That's what I want you to look at. An interesting thing in this regard is that I wish I had brought it so I could share it with you. But just yesterday I received an email from somebody that I don't even remember where he is, or somebody I'd never heard of before. That's happening a lot lately. Who was thanking me for making it clear that what it is that needs to be looked at is me, and that he sees that he apparently has been in a Buddhist practice for some time, and he sees that what I am talking about, what I call me, is what the Buddhists call unconditioned awareness, and that me is much better. It's much more to the point, that the whole business of unconditioned awareness and so forth is abstract, and although it may be accurate enough, it doesn't get you there. Me is the best. Look at me. So I mean, I don't have much of anything to say, do I? The things that that kind of come to mind to say, I really don't want to say. And so what do you do about that? So this is something that I'm really curious about. I'm afraid I'm going to have to talk about this. I've run out of anything to talk about. I'm afraid I'm going to have to talk about this a little bit. I mean, really, it's... Do you guys see why it is that I am adamant about insisting that this is not a spiritual teaching and not in any way related to any spiritual teaching? Is anybody confused about that? Okay, then I don't have to talk about that. There it is. Yes. You'd like to hear about it. Well, in the first place, it's not a teaching, because I don't really have anything to teach you, except this one act, and that hardly consists in a teaching. I have, like everybody else has, my own ideas about how to speak of the nature of reality and our relationship to reality and life and all of that. And I believe, and I don't believe, it's more than a belief, it's clear to me that human that there is such an infinitely wide range of legitimate human activity and investigation and involvement, that it's hard to say that anything is not legitimate human activity. Like, I think it's a perfectly legitimate human aspiration to become comfortable in their lives, to have enough money, to have enough food, to even have pleasures and luxuries and things of that nature. I think that's a perfectly legitimate human aspiration. Hijacked by the fear of life, it becomes a horror story, and probably worse than poverty even, when people go seeking after wealth in order to find happiness. I guarantee you they don't find it. And it's a terrible thing that happens. But in a sane mind, the seeking after wealth and creature comforts and things of that nature is perfectly legitimate. It wouldn't be legitimate to do so at the expense of other human beings, but to do so for your own sake is perfectly legitimate. Seeking after getting high, perfectly legitimate human thing to do. If it's hijacked by the fear of life and becomes an addictive behavior that further drags you into misery and confusion, then it's been contaminated and corrupted by that, same as the seeking after wealth. The seeking after understanding, likewise, is a perfectly legitimate human activity, a human aspiration. The philosophical investigations into the nature of reality, philosophical and scientific investigations into the nature of reality. It's getting to the point now where science and philosophy are it's hard to find the line that divides them. All of that. Seeking after religious aspiration, also a legitimate human activity. I might have the opinion that it leads nowhere except to some satisfying practices and so forth, but that's okay. Doesn't matter. No one's harmed by the seeking after religious aspiration. Seeking after spiritual enlightenment is legitimate human aspiration. It is, when it's hijacked by the fear of life, it becomes a way of acquiring the means whereby I can be protected against the horrors of life. I can either transcend life, escape from life, or do something to transform the content of the life so that it's going to make me okay. When it's done with a purpose of making me okay, it becomes hijacked and contaminated, and no one gets much of any good out of it. Gets a lot of misery, a lot of pain, a lot of torment actually comes in that realm. I do know, so it's not the activity itself that I'm talking about here. It's not the fact that we seek spiritual understanding that I'm talking about here. It's the context in which this occurs. And the context in which it occurs now is universally a context of insanity. It's just, everybody's crazy. Everybody. Desperate and crazy. Maybe some of the teachers aren't completely crazy, but they don't know how to say whatever it is that they could say to help the rest of us out, because they are trapped in the same contextual understanding that has produced the entire vocabulary of spiritual aspiration and spiritual understanding. Now the particular realm that we are familiar with is the realm of ancient wisdom teachings, mostly from the East, mostly from India. Other places too, some of them, we mix and match them pretty good, especially in this country. The appearance of these ancient wisdom teachings in their original form came about around 5,000 years ago. And it's an interesting fact that all over the world, not just in India, not just in China, not just in Japan or Korea or anywhere, but in Greece and in the Eastern Mediterranean and that whole area. There was around 5,000 years ago. There was a kind of a wholesale turning of attention to the solving of the problem of being human, turning that effort to find the solution inward. Prior to that, I mean, in the distant past, we were too, we didn't live long enough to worry about it anyway, right? And we were usually swallowed up by some beast or something and carried away. And when we became sufficiently civilized and sufficiently organized in our capacity to feed ourselves and make ourselves safe from wild animals and things of that nature, of course, our search for a solution to the human problem all was outward. It was in forces outside of us, animism and the like, forces that nature forces and things like that, and gods. Finally, the more developed form of that approach is gods and goddesses, and finally the monotheistic God of Judeo-Christianity. These are all outward solutions, all looking outward for some solution to the problem of being human. And then about 5,000 years ago, God knows why, this great turning happened, a great turning, in which all over the world, independent of each other, of course, this was 5,000 years ago after all over the world, the human creatures started turning inward, searching for a solution to the problem of being human. And it was at that time that the Vedas and eventually the Upanishads and all of that appeared in India and were crystallized as these wisdom teachings. Now, and they come down to us pretty much the same as they were when they were sitting around the fires talking about it. Pretty much the same point of view, the same collection of understandings driving them and so forth, as was the case 5,000 years ago when they first appeared. The reason for that is because they were perceived with some justification to be precious things that should be preserved and kept in their pure form in order that they could be passed down to others, other generations and other people in their purest form, because they were seen to be precious jewels of a gift that held within them somehow the power to free the individual human being if the individual human being was qualified to receive them, qualified by the history of their past lives or by their actions in the present, the things they did to mortify themselves and free themselves of attachment to the physical and things like that. So they were felt to be these precious things that, for those who were qualified to receive them, actually would bring them to the state of freedom from the human condition, freedom from the sorrow and pain and confusion that attends human existence. Now, that was 5,000 years ago. They're still pretty much the same now. When you read them in the books, they're pretty much the same stuff. They all come now pretty much from the Upanishads. The Upanishads, in the Indian versions, the Upanishads crystallized those understandings, and it's pretty much that comes down to us as the spiritual teachings of our own day. 5,000 years ago. 5,000 years ago. 5,000 years ago, we knew beyond a shadow of a doubt, in a way that could not even be questioned, that the earth was the center of the universe. That the earth was a still point in the center of the universe. And that the entire universe swept around the earth in obeisance to the wonder of the earth. We knew that to be the case. I mean, go out at night, look at the sky. The universe circles around us. We're not moving, the universe is moving. 5,000 years ago, that's what we knew to be the case. 5,000 years ago, when the teachings were first promulgated, we were coming freshly out of attachment to animism and other outward forces as the solution to the problem of being human. So that the turn inward was dramatic and powerful, and an incredible gift to humanity. But of course, these practices and insights and understandings all appeared within a context that was developed and in service to the fear of life. Because 5,000 years ago, we still had the same way of being born, the same circumstances attended our arrival on this earth, whether at birth or not, the same, even worse, even less mitigated dangers and confusions and ignorance afflicted us then, and the fear of life was in us then. It's the fear of life that, and the kind of feeling of a antagonism between me and life itself, the kind of internal war that has appeared between me and my life, that has given rise to the well-honored tradition of the adversary. You know, there's a feeling here that something's out to get me. And that's given rise in the religious and spiritual ideologies to the idea of an adversary, an enemy, something out there, or in even original sin. We did something wrong. We don't know what it was. We did something wrong for which we're paying. And these teachings appeared, and my own opinion is that in whatever it was that motivated people to begin to turn inward, some few of us stumbled upon reality and stumbled upon the actual natural state of human existence. And those few of us stumbled upon it within the context of, first of all, the fear of life, in which everything whatsoever is brought in and hijacked and put to use to the stupid goal of protecting me from my own life. These teachings appeared in that same context, and they appeared in a context of just coming from a very spiritualist kind of approach to life, animistic approach to life, and so forth. So the very language of the teachings themselves is contaminated. It is a language that suggests that there is something dreadfully wrong with what we see to be the case. That there's something dreadfully wrong with our understandings of things. There's something dreadfully wrong with our experience of life itself. That there's something wrong here, and we better fix it. And actually, it might not be fixable. It might be that the only possibility for relief from the suffering of being a human being is the transcendence of human life entirely. And especially the transcendence of self-consciousness entirely. We saw early on the link between self-consciousness and the problem. but we didn't understand the actual characteristic of that link. We thought that self-consciousness was the cause of the problem. We saw that early on, that there was this link. But we thought that self-consciousness was the cause of the problem, that the sense of me as a separate, distinct individual was what caused the problem. Therefore, one of the lines we took was the destruction of that sense of self-consciousness. The no mind, emptiness, nothing here, nothing happening version of spiritual development. Now, all of this is perfectly understandable. And despite the incredible limitations that the experience that was available to those folks placed upon them, it wasn't like they could have done any differently. 5,000 years ago, we thought the earth was stable at the center of the universe. Wasn't any way they could have done any differently, and throughout the 5,000 years that they have been in play, there have been probably many people who have, following one regimen or another, have stumbled upon reality, have discovered the natural state of being human, and have set out to try to bring it to other people, but without suspecting that the way in which they understood it and the way the language and the terminology that they used to express it could not possibly communicate the simplicity, the actual radical simplicity of what was required. That when we start speaking about the importance of understanding the nature of reality as a way to get freedom from the problems of life, we are talking crazy talk. Really. There's no understanding of the nature of reality, for one thing, that is comprehensive enough to be held in a human mind. And for another thing, the idea that understanding gives us anything is just, I'm sorry, not very smart. Understanding is a capacity we have that's human and extremely valuable and extremely satisfying when brought to bear on the things that are happening within our life. Like I understand that if there's clouds in the sky, it's probably going to rain. And that understanding is useful to me because then I'll bring an umbrella when I go outside. I have an understanding of a whole lot of things. I have even some understanding of things that have nothing to do with the physical nature of the way my life unfolds. I have understanding of some philosophies. I have understanding of something about mathematics. I have a little bit of understanding about physics and so forth, and those are all delightful and pleasant and pleasurable. They have no particular practical use to me, but they still give me pleasure and satisfaction. But if I turn to understanding as a way to somehow, and you see the idea is that if we get the right understanding, then all the falsity will disappear. That the right understanding will flush out everything false. But that's just crazy. That's not our experience as humans. That's not the way we experience understanding. Understanding is a practical capacity of the human intelligence. And the understanding of deep and hidden things is a joyful and pleasurable pursuit to undertake. But it doesn't give us anything. It doesn't change the fact that the rent's due. It doesn't change the fact that you could get sick. It doesn't change the fact that pain occurs. It doesn't change the fact that your children may be gone crazy and getting thrown in jail or something. It doesn't change any of that. No understanding changes that. It might give you a little more facility with which to deal with those circumstances that they arise. But understanding isn't going to make your life better. Isn't going to do away with the problem. Isn't going to do away with the sense that life is out to get you. Isn't going to do away with the sense that life just ain't worth living. So we come in here now to the 20th century. And these same teachings have been passed along for 5,000 years, pretty much undiluted. You know, we mess with them a little bit, especially now that they've come here to the wonder of the United States of America, where we mess with everything. We mess with them a little bit, but basically they're the same as they were when they were expounded around the campfires in northern India, way back when. And they just don't work. Every once in a while, somebody stumbles. The reason they have had such long life is because those who have promulgated them have done so from having attained the natural state themselves. And I tell you, the natural state, part of the actuality of the natural state is the certain uncomplicated and uncontested reality, experience of the reality that humanity is one creature. We are in this together. It is one creature that consists in many, many lives. 7 billion of us now? One creature. And that the boundaries between us are actually very porous. The boundaries in consciousness are very porous. We have boundaries and they're important and and useful to us, but they're very porous. So that if you're miserable, that misery is present in me. If you're fearful, that fear is present in me. If you're confused and angry and filled with ignorance, all of that is present in me, in the background, somewhere. I'm aware of it. So the arising of compassion in a human mind that has stumbled upon the natural state is inevitable. Compassion being the experience of the suffering of others. Compassion is something like empathy, only stronger, more consistently present. So what have they done? And they have done pretty much what I tried to do in the beginning of this adventure of me trying to find a way to say what happened to me. What they have done is spoken about what it feels like to be free, basically. Stop your resistance. Resistance is futile, as someone once said. Resistance is futile. Stop your resistance. Resistance is the cause of your misery. Stop your grasping. Grasping is futile. Grasping is the cause of your misery. Here's a practice that you can do in order to minimize or diminish the grip of grasping on your psychology. Because if you're done with grasping, and if you're done with resisting, then you'll be free. And all the other catalog of aspects of the way in which the bound human behaves and relates to life. Resistance, clinging, denial, grasping, it's a bushel basket full of them. But what I was just saying is this is a subject that I've wanted to talk about, been very reluctant to do so, because the truth is that I am opposed to nothing. This act contends with nothing. The fact is that no matter what the case is of the usefulness or uselessness of the spiritual teachings and the spiritual aspiration, nothing needs to be done about them. There's no need to in order to have this simple act of inward-looking work, does not require you to abandon those understandings or to abandon those beliefs. Those beliefs and understandings that are false and conducive to reactive behaviors and so forth, they'll go on their own. and I really am not, I want to contend with nothing. But I do want to talk about this because of the fact that I came from this. That's simply the case. I came from a spiritual practice, from a long-term spiritual aspiration. So they tell us this. They tell us what it's like to be free. And they do this not because they wish to withhold from us the joy of human life, but because they don't know how to say it any differently. I really can relate to that, how hard it is to say it any differently. So, over all these thousands of years, some people, and like the act that brings an end to it, I suspect is always the same. The trigger that causes the individual human consciousness to take that act can be quite a few. And mostly just kind of accidental in the course of trying to do something else. Like with me, I didn't know what I was doing. When I embarked upon the desire to free myself of hope, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how to go about it. I had nothing whatsoever except a desire to show that Ramana's act and the choice of Ramana was almost just a crapshoot. To show that Ramana's act couldn't produce anything, and therefore to find what Ramana's act was. But they tell us what it feels like, and that really rings true to us when we start speaking in the vernacular of the spiritual understanding. The promises that seem to be contained in there ring true to us. We know it's true that if we weren't resistant, that our resistance is actually stupid. We know that. Somewhere inside we know that. We know it's true that if we could rid ourselves of clinging and resistance and antagonism and all of that, that if we could be finished with that, if we could be finished with denial, if we could be finished with all of that, we know that we would be safe and secure and well at last. We know that. It rings true. And when I speak about the outcome, the results of the looking, when I speak about it, I cannot speak about the results except in a way that resonates with something spiritual that's been said. It's impossible for me to speak about what it's like to live without the fear, without resonating with something within the body of spiritual understanding. It's just not possible for that to happen. And I know that to be the case. And so that I find it, for me, it's essential in order to get the most out of what I have to offer. It's essential to put down the spiritual books when you're with me, to put down the spiritual understandings when you're with me. I really understand clearly the draw of them and the clarity of them and the essential underlying truth of them, but they are a snare and a delusion when you're actually seeking an end to the problem. It's not their fault. It's just the case. It's not the fault of the spiritual teachers. It's just the case. And that's why I want to make it clear that what I'm doing is not a spiritual teaching. I really want there to be no confusion there, because that confusion just prolongs the healing process. That the looking for signs that come from your prior spiritual understandings as a way to know that you're finally on the right track, looking for those things are going to lead you in the wrong direction. There's nothing special about the natural state. There's no specialness to it. We're seeking specialness in order to escape from what appears to be a life that's out to swallow us up. There's nothing special about the natural state. What's special about it is the absence of any distance whatsoever between you and the endlessly arriving phenomena that constitute your life, the content of your life. That's what happens. The fear of that life departs, and what life is as a result of that is what it's always been. And what happens to you is not transcendence and not transformation. There's no transcendence or transformation really available to you. What happens to you is sanity. The mind, the psychological apparatus that is the shape of your personality, the way in which your person faces the world, goes sane. That's truly it. And sanity reveals my God, why would anybody ever want anything other than to be an ordinary human being, living an ordinary human life? What in the world could be better than this? Really? Drama, action, hot, cold, pleasure, pain, problems, understanding, solutions, things to do, things to think about, things to figure out, things to accomplish, accomplishments, failures. Who could want more than this? What in the world could be more than a human life, as far as a creature is concerned? And that's what's seen. The ache for transcendence vanishes. Trust me, it just vanishes. The love affair with advanced spiritual understandings having to do with emptiness and inexistence and so forth and so on, vanishes. I mean, really, just vanishes. The interest in the entire world of spiritual aspiration and spiritual utterance vanishes. It's not like you say, okay, well, I'm not going to read any more spiritual books. That's what I want you to do now. Say, I'm not going to read any more spiritual books. But it's not like that. It's just that when all is said and done, they're not very interesting when you're in the life. You know, they're just not very interesting. They're only interesting when you're spinning in this torment trying to escape from life. Sitcoms are more interesting. At least they're, human beings, right? Having human activities. So, I love the spiritual teachings, although they don't interest me anymore. I am infinitely grateful for having stumbled upon those ancient wisdom teachings, which by their very inability to satisfy me and their actual kind of rejection of me led me to this wonder of natural human existence. I used to think I used to read, there's a spiritual book, actually it's a huge thing. We don't even have 1% of it. We don't have 1% of it translated into English at this time anyway, called Yoga Vasisthara. And it's this vast, it's like what is that other one they have, the Amitabha? Something, I can't remember the name of these things anymore. but it's called Yoga Vasishtha. It's this vast, endless, meandering, nonsensical adventure story of human life, in which nothing makes sense, in which things just turn into other things without any warning whatsoever, and it's full of wonder. It's a wonderland. And I used to read Yoga Vasishtha, and I used to just love it. Oh my God! If only people could just see this. Well, it doesn't have much interest in me anymore. You're of interest to me. Life is of interest to me. And the artistic representation of life as a teaching doesn't interest me. I don't need an artistic representation of life. I have life. I am life, as are you. So, what I offer is not a spiritual teaching. It's a single, solitary act of inward turning. A single, solitary act of attempting on your own hook, with your own natural intelligence, your own natural capacity for discernment. You can rely on those things, on your own hook, to get a taste of what it feels like to be you. Not because that taste is going to satisfy you, because it won't. There's nothing, you're really not there's not much to you. Not that taste is going to satisfy you, or that taste is somehow going to reveal to you the truth of your nature or anything of the kind, but just as a medicine, taking antibiotics. Nothing more to it than that. Okay? Okay, I'm done talking. And now, it's your guys' turn. And I will stay here within reason, well, at least until 5, for as long as you want to come and talk to me and work with this. And if you're done now, we can leave now. But I'll give you a little time. Yes. Hi. What's your name?
Randy.
Oh, Randy. You're Randy.
Yeah, I've been, I've been listening to you for maybe, podcasts for maybe 4 years, and I like to, I think of myself now as maybe being in the course of recovery, but I understand that maybe I'm just deluding myself and I'm just using buzzwords that you use, just kind of parroting you. I've been quite a roller coaster ride, especially the last year or so, and now I seem to be kind of stuck in a situation where I'm just kind of flatlined. And I hear you talk about how wondrous life is and interesting, and I hear you say things like I love you guys, and I love everybody, and and I see, for me to get to that point would be kind of a miraculous transformation, because really I'm sort of I'm very cynical, and I still kind of keep everything at arm's length. I think I keep life at arm's length, and have a lot of self-protection and going on. But on the other hand, I can also see that over the last year or two, there've been times when life has really gone smoothly, regardless of what the circumstances have been. And so I don't know what my question is, but that's kind of where I'm at, and it's hard for me to make that leap that you have made, which is the leap from giving up the spiritual search to which I've done gladly, but I also given up the search for everything else. Given up and kind of lost a lot of the interest that I used to have, and you know, I'm not a social person, and you know, I look around at the world, and I you know, I see a lot of insanity and so on and so on. So.
Oh, I see a lot of insanity in the world, Randy. We're together on that. The world, the human world of humanity, is. I almost said something I shouldn't say, but.
Go ahead and say it.
Bat feces crazy.
Yeah.
The human world, and that's just the case. That's what the fear has brought us to. That's what we've come to, and we've actually come to the point. And I don't want to come off like some kind of an Old Testament prophet, but we've actually come to the point where it really is possible that we may already be over the edge of the possibility of surviving as a species. And we certainly have it within our power, if we continue going the way we are, to just simply discard this species. You know, it's just didn't work out. It was a good idea, but it didn't work out.
Somehow somehow you've, you know, you think, well, you've got a purpose now. You can sort of, hey, I can at least try to save the world. You know.
Oh, I think I can. I mean, not me.
Right.
But
well,
I think I am, actually I'm completely optimistic. I don't know whether we've already gone too far,
right.
but I am filled with optimism, really, and hope. There's a non-spiritual. Now there is a non-spiritual thing, right? Hope. I'm filled with optimism and hope, because if this could come to me, it could come to anybody. And if it could come, I mean, literally, there are literally, I know I keep saying literally and so forth, but there are literally thousands of people now all over the world who have entered into this work and found the promise fulfilled. So I'm filled with hope and optimism about what's possible. I see how terrible things are. Things are hard. Things are, I mean, they're just, it's impossible to overstate the horror of the human creature and the way it's expressing itself in our time. But about you. About you. I can't know one way or the other what is actually occurring within your life. All right, I can't know. You can tell me that there are times when life seems to be smooth, even though it's hard, and then those times pass, and now you're in a position of being kind of, I guess, dumbed down and I can't think of the word I'm trying to think of, but inert and not interested in anything. It could be that you're on the course of recovery. That could be the case. If you started listening to me 4 years ago, it's a little more difficult for that to have been the case, because 4 years ago was a long time ago in the development of this, of my expression, right? Although there are people who were able to hear me even then. There are people that actually were able to hear me before then, just like there are people that were able to hear all the other people that are around, right? But here's the thing. We don't have to theorize and hypothesize about what's going on with you. If you will just look. Just look. You're here, right?
Well, yes, and but that has sort of that looking has sort of taken the wind out of my sails, because I really don't have, I came here, I really don't have any burning questions, and you have pretty much said it all, and so
are you continuing to look?
Well, yeah. For example, during the break today, I mean, I went out for a walk, and I kind of looked at the beautiful scenery, but then I also made that attempt to look inward and to really concentrate on it and really work at it. And but then, like when I say it takes the wind out of your sails, it's kind of like, as you say, there's really no way of knowing that you're hitting the target, and there's really no immediate effect. There's no buzz you get. Hey, at least if you go out and smoke pot, you get a
That's
buzz.
right. That's right.
But,
That is it's not a problem exactly, but it can be seen as a problem. Here's the way you can tell, and it does turn out that there is one sign that seems to be an almost sure sign that the looking is doing its work, and that is that you continue doing it.
Well, the fact that I'm here is pretty miraculous, really. That I'm at this retreat, which I would consider that I'm continuing doing it.
Right. If you continue doing it, and oftentimes you continue doing it even though it seems stupid to do so. If you continue doing it, then you've done it, and the end is sure, from the reports of everybody who has tried this. And have you been on the website?
Yes, I have. I haven't contributed to it, but I
Have you
looked at it.
read or listened to the reports that have been put up recently from people?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
And you see how different they are, right?
Yeah.
And some of them, and there's one, there's a woman who I think she has a report up there. I'm not going to embarrass her by telling her name, but there's a person who, like, last month was writing and saying, this just doesn't work. This is stupid. It doesn't work. I'm still the same as I always was. I am just as conflicted, just as stupid, just as aggressive and all of those things as I have ever been. And then, a week, 2 weeks later? 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, an email came in which, and this isn't like the only communication I had with her. This is a communication that goes back over some time of complaint, and it's not working, and I don't know what I'm doing. It must be me, or it must be you, or I don't know what it is, and so forth and so on, over some period of time. And then 2 weeks after the last version of that report, everything broke open. I mean, not broke open. I hate to say that because it's not like a breaking open. But she wrote to say that now she sees life is just as I said it was. Anyway, the point is that
But she may be deluding herself too. I mean, because hey, a year
you
ago,
listen to her report.
I mean, a year ago, I had periods where I was giddy. I was in love with life, and
That's not the kind of report I'm talking about.
Right.
I kind of take those with a grain of salt.
And I don't mean to say anybody's deluding themselves, except I'm in a situation where I'm always aware of the self-consciousness. I'm always aware of the situation. I'm sitting here. I wonder what he's thinking. I'm thinking, and my mind's always going like that. I'm always aware of being aware, and it would be that self-consciousness. I've had that all my life, really, and I've always thought that was the enemy. And I think the valuable thing that I learned from you was that self-consciousness isn't the enemy. I mean, that's actually a tool. Self-consciousness it's a miraculous gift.
It's
really.
a miraculous gift.
But to be in a position where or to reach a state where I'm suddenly filled with wonder at looking at a blade of grass or a tree or something, I feel like I've just gone beyond that. I'm too cynical for that. I'm too aware of. I would be saying, oh, look at you, you're just pretending to be that, or you hear somebody else say it and you say, oh, well, what are they trying to get? What's their angle? And I mean, even with you, I've thought that, gee, I've argued with you for 4 years, trying to poke holes in what you say, and wondering what your motives are and things like that.
I'm trying to get rich, obviously. That's why I charge all this money.
Well, I know that I used to talk about grabbing ego by the throat. I wanted to grab John Sherman by the throat, but a guy who's been in prison 18 years, I don't think you grab him. You probably still know some moves. So. Anyway,
All of that, none of those things, the cynicism, the whole array of things, that liturgy of things that you just gave to us, none of that is of any importance whatsoever. It will go, and part of the whole apparatus is and it may not be something that's conscious or like really present or anything, but a sense that what has to happen is things got to be wiped out. Like I said about the woman erroneously, everything broke open, that everything has to break open. And that was an error when I said that, because nothing breaks open. It takes some time, even after the neurotic behavioral traits and habits and so forth, even after they go, it takes some time to have any idea of what's happened. This is not a quick fix. And the other thing about it is that there is within us, especially those of us who are, it's not just the spiritual seekers, it's those of us who have some kind of exalted sense of our intellectual understanding of things and our ability to see through things and so forth. It is not uncommon for us to expect that there will be a moment when everything is cleared up, and that's what I'm waiting for.
The aha moment where
Right.
the mind stops.
Right. This doesn't have that, and the truth is, and this is really important, there's no finishing to this. There is no finish. It's not like things progress along some path to get to some preferred state, and then the preferred state arrives, and you say, I'm done. There's no finishing to this. This is life, which is endlessly surprising in the way that it moves and appears and expresses itself and changes and so forth and so on. Nothing is ever finished. You will never be finished. But the day is coming when that won't trouble you. In fact, you'll see it as a feature, not a bug. The day's coming. Now, for me, and I too, I was there, except for the brief period of time when I got enlightened, there wasn't anybody more cynical than me. I was, so I'm familiar with cynicism, and I'm familiar with its attraction, and I'm familiar with the fact that it has a certain sense of justification to it too. I'm familiar with all of that.
And detached
Yeah.
irony.
Yeah, right, exactly. That all just goes. And it's not uncommon either for the one in whom that has become such a powerful part of the defensive apparatus itself. It's not uncommon for that to go maybe even before you know it's gone, and be honoring like paper cutouts of what used to be cynicism and ironic detachment and all of that. For me, it took, 94, 96, the 94, 96. 5 or 6 years. It took 5 or 6 years after having, in retrospect, seeing that I had accomplished what it was that needs to be accomplished before I knew that that was the case.
During those 5 or 6 years, were things getting worse? Not circumstantially, but your own just state of well-being or satisfaction. Your
Yeah,
satisfaction
they were
with
getting
life.
much worse.
That was getting
There was
worse.
a period.
So
there
you
was
must have thought, this is not working. That
Yes.
whatever I'm doing is not working.
That's but I went into it thinking it wouldn't work. I was surprised that I was concerned about it didn't work.
And you had no one to tell you, well, just
No.
hang on, keep
No,
going.
that's it. I didn't have me, right? So
But I don't want you either, because I don't want to believe. I don't want to be in a situation where I have to believe what you're saying.
You don't have
because
to-
that's spiritual. That's
you do
spiritual
see that I don't
guru.
expect you to believe anything I'm saying. I
I-
tell you what
you
I
expect
see
me
to
to
be the
find out for
case,
myself,
and you
right.
find out for yourself. This is a point of view that you can see whether or not there's any validity to it or any actual usefulness to it. I don't ask you to believe it, but when I say you don't have me, I mean I didn't have me. I didn't have somebody to try to speak from the point of view of the natural human state of sanity to someone who is undergoing the process of recovering from the horror of human life prior to that. I didn't have that. So it took 5 or 6 years from the time that the actual act was accomplished, and I know when it happened now. I didn't at the time because I didn't know what I was looking for. But I know when it happened now, and it was accidental. It wasn't in compliance with what I thought would be the case, right? And it took 5 or 6 years, and the first part of that was in great misery. There was a period of about a year or so when I just kind of didn't care about much of anything. And in fact, when I was released from prison, you know, I had a 30-year sentence, and the only reason I had a 30-year sentence was because of some really understandable leniency on a part of 2 judges. It just was, it was bizarre. Really, nobody could understand it. But I had a 30-year sentence, and in the federal prison system at that time, that meant that I was eligible for what's called mandatory parole after completing 2/3 of that, 20 years of it. When I completed 20 years of it and was due for mandatory parole, mandatory release, I didn't believe I was going to be released. I mean, it wasn't like I said, oh, that's not going to happen. It's like, it was just incomprehensible to me that they would let me go. And on the day that I was to be released, they took me to receiving and discharge, the department that does that, right? And they put me in a holding cell. This is 6 o'clock in the morning. And the department head of receiving and discharge came in, and what they call my files are like this, right? I'm not exaggerating. And this guy put me in a holding cell and went through every piece of paper in my jacket, searching for some way not to release me. But I didn't care. I mean, I sat in the holding cell, assuming that they were going to take me back and I'd be back into the system again, and I didn't care. But not in alive and, you know, like, oh, this is fine.
Oh, nothing's at stake. I'm so happy that I'm
Not like
my
that,
life,
just
there's
like-
nothing at stake.
Just like, this is same old, same old. I'm not going to, you know, why would they release me? And then I went through a period of real torment and misery and psychological stupidity. And I don't even remember the particulars of it. And then things started to quiet down. And as things started to quiet down, and people started actually wanting me to come and talk to them, have satsang, then I started having satsang. Carla and I were married, and it began to dawn on me that something had really changed fundamentally. When I started trying to speak to people in a spiritual context, I came to see that I actually did have something to speak to people about, but this was not the vehicle that could possibly carry it. And then I began to see what was going on. So, 4 years, I wouldn't worry about it.
Well, I can still see though, I mean, a guy who's been in prison for 18 years and he gets out, okay, gee, life looks pretty good all of a sudden, you know, gee,
Yeah, but that isn't the way it is when you get out of prison, actually. No, it's not, that's not.
or
Getting out of prison
I have a
is-
new lease on life.
No, that's not the way it is when you get out of prison. It's not
Okay,
like that
so
at all.
you had hit
It's
bottom.
like, oh,
You-
boy,
at some point you had hit bottom and you figured there was no way you were gonna
Yeah.
get out of it.
Yeah.
But at all that time, when you had hit bottom, you were still doing this act, this one solitary act.
Yes, I was, as a matter of fact.
And you were,
I didn't make
and
much
that was
of
your
it.
only hope. That was your.
No, actually, it was just all kind of automatic. I'd given up hope. I couldn't even find the hope that I would be able to give up hope. You know, it was just that from time to time, without any reason whatsoever, I'd find myself trying to bring my attention inward, trying to get a taste of something that I had had a taste of before. And it wasn't that I planned it or I wanted to do it or it was part of my belief structure or anything of the kind. It just did itself. Just would come and do itself, and then I'd forget about it. Now, it used to be, when I first started talking about looking, that I would tell people, just do this whenever it occurs to you to do so. Because that was my sense of what was the case in my own case. That from time to time it would occur to me to do this, and I would do it. Since then, I've come to see that the occurring to me to do so was just the way I spoke of the fact that it happened. Right? It just happened and repeated. And it wasn't because I believed in it. It wasn't because I thought it was going to bring me anything. It just was something that happened from time to time.
And you knew it was happening.
Oh yeah, I knew it was
You
happening.
felt a sense that, gee, I'm feeling what it feels like to be me. I'm
No,
feeling-
I felt a sense of inward looking, trying to find something. You know, not the sense of success. You have to, and this is good because it's important to see this. You may never, ever, now you will sooner or later, but it may be a long time before you actually are able to identify this constant experience of the presence of you for what it is. Maybe some time before that happens, because it's not at all obvious, and it's not at all, interesting even, right? Until you see it for what it is. But the awareness of the feeling of you is always present, always in your consciousness, always. And we don't see it, and because it's of no importance to us. And it really is of no importance to us, see? That's the thing, it really is of no importance, except that it's the medicine that will cure the disease. After that, it's just you.
Okay, I just have one more quick question. And I mean, you talk about how I've heard you say, give an example where you catch a glimpse of yourself in the mirror and you're surprised to see this old geezer, because you think of yourself, you still. But for me, sometimes it's the opposite, where I'll be in a bad mood, or I'll even be sick or something, foul mood. I'll look at myself in the mirror and I'll see that there's that I pretty much look the same. There's sort of an intelligence there, behind the eyes or something. I mean, is there anything to that? Just to if you catch a glimpse of yourself in the mirror and you say, oh, no matter how bad or good I feel, that same look still seems to be, behind the eyes, or that same intelligence is looking back, no matter how sick I am, or.
See, the point of the looking is not to understand the constancy of your nature. It's not to understand that there's that intelligence there. It's the same as it's always been. That's not what the looking is intended to produce. I mean, that can be produced, and it can happen in a mirror. It can happen in a lot of different ways. Yes, that's the same. But that's not what we're trying to accomplish. That is part of the kind of way in which spiritual understandings can be clinging.
It's like
Because, right, it's an undercurrent of something. It's not really expressed, but it's a foundation for seeing things, right? And that's not what we're doing. We're not trying to reveal to ourselves our unchanging nature. We're not trying to reveal to ourselves anything about ourselves. We are just trying to touch ourselves for no purpose other than that touch. There's nothing to be gained in the way you're speaking of it, right? The looking in the mirror is okay, but that's looking in the mirror. That doesn't give you the touch, because that's all we're trying to do. And that's where the spiritual teachings and this work kind of depart from each other. Because in the spiritual teachings, for the most part, that's exactly what we're seeking. I mean, sometimes in some of the more esoteric ones, we're seeking, rainbow bodies and things of that nature. But in the teachings that have come down to us from the Upanishads, what we're seeking basically is a true understanding of our nature and the nature of reality. And if we can come to a true understanding of our nature, then everything will be settled and it'll be finished. That's the basic promise that underlies the Upanishadic teachings. And I say that understanding gives us nothing except understanding. And if the understanding appears within the context of the fear, it just gives us an understanding that further cements us to that foolish idea that life is going to swallow me up and that life is my enemy. So, it's just the touch. It's all not very complicated, not very interesting.
Okay.
Okay? I hope that's helpful. Okay, we got time for one more. Hi.
Hi, John.
Hi. I don't remember your name.
Jalaluddin.
Jalaluddin, of course it is.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yes, it's been a while. It's good to see you.
Thank you. Whenever I've read your book probably 5 to 6 times, and every time I pick it up and read it, I seem to get on this intensive looking at myself. And it goes on reading the book, and probably for a couple months afterwards, it's like it just fills me up. I just can't leave it alone. And then it starts dying away. And then, seems like after that, this has happened quite a few times, after that, I don't notice looking at myself for quite a while, and then maybe I will be doing it. And then it's one of the reasons why I'm here. Also feels like to recharge, or and
Okay, go on.
so I'm just I'd like to continue it, all the time, even when I'm not reading a material or.
Well, then, if that's the case, then you're missing the point. And actually,
what?
you're missing the point if that's the case. You're wanting to continue it all the time,
Well,
but it's okay. It's okay.
yeah,
I understand
I
it.
think so.
I understand it. But the looking is not to be fetishized. It's a means to an end. There's nothing about the looking that gives you anything. Nothing. It doesn't change you one iota. It gives you nothing. It takes nothing away from you. The only thing it does is eliminate the fear of life. So, and it happens to be kind of a can be a pleasurable thing to engage in the looking and so forth. But I suggest that you don't worry about that. The looking, the act of looking, the actual action of it that is done by you will stop. There's no point to it. When the fear is gone, there's no point to it anymore. You're here, you know you're here. You don't need to remind yourself of that. You're here. You're actually completely aware of your presence here. The looking can be, like the kind of habitual wanting to look can actually be because it feels kind of good to get a feel for you. But it's absolutely unnecessary. When it goes, it goes. And if you read my book and it pumps you up to do it again, then stop reading my book. Really. I'll tell you something about that book. I guess I shouldn't tell you since, it's for sale and all. That book, what was the retreat? What year was that retreat? 2007? That book is the transcripts of the 2007 retreat. Now the 2007 retreat is dear to my heart, okay? The 2007 retreat was when, for the year 2007, and the retreat was the culmination of it, was the year when I first began to feel that I had a sense of what needed to happen. When I had a sense of what needed to be said. I had a sense of how that I would be able to find a way to speak what I wanted to speak, which up until then, I actually thought was pretty hopeless. I was trying and I was talking to people all the time, but I really couldn't see I was making any progress in ridding myself of the understandings in the vernacular and the vocabulary and so forth that I had been so indoctrinated into, the spiritual understandings. In 2007 and 2006, we went to Chicago. We came back through Boulder. In Boulder, I had a satsang which was attended by quite a large group of people, which later we entitled Escape from the Spiritual Ghetto. And it was at that time that I began to see the way forward. Not clearly, but kind of through a fog, I began to see the way forward. And I began to see that it was actually possible that we might, at some point, come to the point where we're able to be of help to people. So in 2007, we stopped charging for any events. And the reason for that was because I thought that if this is so, then I don't want the willingness or inability to pay, to stand in the way of anybody's opportunity to get what it is that I'm trying to give them. The 2007 retreat was every year. It's like I guess it's just the nature of human rhythms, right? That there's a point in the year when things are seen to be the culmination and the finishing up of that period of time, and that's what these retreats have been for us all along. And at the 2007 retreat, I felt that we really had made a breakthrough. It wasn't complete, but we had made a breakthrough. And I think it's when I first started talking in terms of looking at yourself. But I was still not free of the baggage, the weight of my spiritual understanding. There's a lot of stuff that I did in this 2007 retreat that was conditioned by spiritual understanding. Not so anymore so much. So the book, Look at Yourself, which is the 2007 retreat, although to my great surprise, it has been received by a lot of people, and a lot of people have found a lot of help to it. it still is it still represents a really early stage of the final development of what it is that I'm actually trying to do here. So beware of that book. It's it's a forked tongue, you know.
Yes.
So be aware of that, and so that I imagine, I haven't read it, but I imagine that reading it can kind of inflame the fires of spiritual juiciness and so forth. And if it does, and if anybody's listening to this, immediately put that book down. Put it down.
It's down.
Look at you.
And you just said something that I realized that I really have put down my spiritual baggage big time.
Yeah.
I hadn't even realized that before. And I just want to make a little report here that certainly my life shows up as being a lot different. And it's richer. And, things come and go, but the good and the bad, and it's just all rich.
Yes, all life.
And I'm really thankful. And I get a lot of chuckles when I'm doing something stupid, like, traveling and going in the wrong direction, trying to find the right
me
gate,
too.
whatever.
Me too. I have a lot of fun laughing at my stupidity, don't I? Yeah.
So,
And don't worry about continuing the looking. When the looking does its job, it just goes away. It's of no use to you other than to free you of the disease. It's just like antibiotics. You don't continue taking antibiotics when the infection is gone. It's the same with the looking. The effort to try to continue the looking when the disease has departed is just another hangover from the ways in which we used to live our lives, with constantly needing to be reminded of things, and I can't forget that I'm this and not that, and all of that. So I would advise that everybody who is new to this try with all their hearts every moment that they get the chance to look at themselves, to turn their attention inward and try to get a taste of themselves, because that's the medicine. When the disease passes, stop taking the medicine. Enjoy life. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, John.
I think that one of the things, it takes some time. It takes some time to recover from the deep-seated feeling that something still has to happen. And that something that still has to happen is somehow going to change you in some way and fix what's still left to be fixed. Well, the feeling that something is about to happen or is going to happen or should happen is because something is always going to happen. That's just the case. That's the way life is. Life is an endless parade of things happening within your consciousness, within your mind. So, there. Okay. Okay, one more.
Just a quick question.
Come on, one more.
I just wanted.
As long as people want to talk to me, I'm going to stay and talk. I was trying to be nice this morning.
Well, I wasn't intending to come up either, so. Hi, I'm Barb.
Hi, Barb. My pleasure.
My pleasure, too. Just what I'm having trouble reconciling is you said, like, mankind may have gone too far. And so there's a fear there that arises in me, and this want to do something to help.
I have the same. I have the same. That's my life. Look at yourself. That's what you can do.
Yeah.
That's it. There's nothing more to be done. Look at yourself, and when help is needed, it'll come asking for you.
Okay, and what if it I think it has.
Has
But
what?
come looking for me.
Then I,
Just move in that direction and
how do I can't give
yeah, I
you
know.
I can't give
I
you
know,
advice
I'm sitting- I was
on
sitting
what
in this-
things come to you that
Yeah.
you should respond to and should
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
Your own natural intelligence.
Yeah.
Just trust yourself.
Uh-huh.
Really. Your own natural intelligence will guide you. All the guidance you need is from that. And you look, when you're finished with this disease that is the problem for all of us. When you're finished with this disease, you'll find that that natural intelligence is clarified and simplified in a way that is unimaginable when we're trapped in this thing of, oh my God, is this right? Is that right? What if I do this? Is that going to be wrong? It's just the way forward is just plain.
Okay, because I thought things were moving along nicely until I took the trip down here, and then it was like every obstacle under the sun has met me somewhere.
Oh,
In
these-
just old attitudes and ways of dealing things, not working out, reactions, all this is just bubbling to the surface, and
That's probably a good sign.
yeah, it probably is a good sign.
You stir the pot, the stuff comes up to the
I
surface.
know. Anyways, and then, the world and the brink of the world and the mankind. And it's like, oh my God,
don't-
I'm just going crazy.
Don't worry about it, but the fate of humankind rests on your
Yeah,
shoulder.
that's right. At some level.
But don't
Yeah.
take it too
And
seriously.
then, are we eternal? And then there's no ending and beginning. Didn't Ramana say that he was going nowhere? I mean, and then I don't know.
Ramana was limited. Ramana was his expression had been hijacked by the intense spiritual investigation he did after what happened to him, and so that, and there's an email newsletter that I get that has quotes from Ramana all the time, and I look at him once in a while, and every once in a while I'll take one and save it because it points out something that I think is important to be seen. And always I see how Ramana was trying to say the same thing that I'm saying, and that how the weight of spiritual understanding was so great, and especially given his position, he really didn't want to do this, right? He ran away from us, hiding in caves and trying to get away from us
not
until finally
talking.
we grabbed him and locked him up in the ashram and so forth, and made him chop carrots for a living and stuff like that, right? But Ramana was his capacity to communicate the simplicity of what had occurred to him, although he stands in a class of his own in that regard. But it still was encumbered by the weight of spiritual understanding. So that I see Ramana, now I see these quotes, and I see Ramana telling somebody very clearly what to do, and then wrapping it but doing so within a context that is conditioned by the spiritual understanding, and seeing how even Ramana was trapped by that, and that he may not even have seen that to be the case. You have to see, Ramana was a 16-year-old boy. His dad died young and suddenly, without any warning whatsoever. And about a year later, Ramana found himself, 16-year-old boy, he was going to the high school at the American University, right? And 16-year-old boy, not especially spiritual or religious any more than any other 16-year-old boy is, and he laid down and pretended to be dead. There's nothing particularly advanced in spiritual understanding that is to be found there. He laid down, he pretended to be dead. He imagined, he stiffened his body, pretending it was in rigor mortis. And this is, when you see it from here, you're seeing it through the veil of all the things that have been said about Ramana, right? So that those very actions now take on a kind of specialness. When we look at it from here, we see those very acts with a kind of specialness, patina of kind of specialness, a haze kind of put over them, right? Oh, right, he laid down, oh my God, it's so... But it was just a 16-year-old boy doing stupid things. That's what it was. And what he finally reported was that what he saw was that the only thing that remained was the force of personality. That's his words. The only thing that remained was the force of personality. That was his realization. That was it. Which is so not spiritual in the normal way that we think of spiritual understanding. Well, now he's had this really profound thing occur within his mind. And, and he's still a 16-year-old boy. He decides that, because he heard that Tiruvannamalai was a place where they had a lot of spiritual stuff going on. From his uncle he heard that. He decided to go to Tiruvannamalai, and he swiped some money from somebody, got a train to Tiruvannamalai, and stayed in Tiruvannamalai for a number of years while a close friend of his that he met there brought him spiritual books. And he tells us that the reason he did that was because he wanted to understand what had happened to him. So his understanding of what had happened to him came from a really intense and deep investigation into the spiritual literature, into the Upanishadic literature. And that from then on in, that's what he had to speak from. And that's the only way that he could find to speak. Although even with that, he was different from everybody else. Like even to say the things he said were, and that's why they hated him. The gurus of the time hated him. So take Ramana with a grain of salt. See Ramana as a human being, and you'll get much more value from seeing what a wondrous human being he actually turned out to be.
Okay, well then, I'm going to bring this up then. So in the situations like the life and teachings of the Masters of the Far East, and where there's a perfecting of the human body, where there's the time travel, where there's different possibilities, where there's angelic realms or celestial realms. I don't know how, and I always come back to grounding with whenever I get into too much out there, to look at myself, just to come back to because sometimes I even listen to myself and I think this sounds a little absurd. And yet there's some part of me that there's some knowing in me, there's some call to me of some sort in all of this that brought me to your teaching, that brought me to that's bringing me somewhere.
Yes, but this whole thing, what you're speaking of, is what brought me to this too. But it's like, I'm going to tell another story about a spiritual teacher who was with Ramana, Papaji.
Yes.
Papaji came to Ramana, and he came to Ramana, and I forget the exact story. Damn, it's a good story too. But he said, he from the time he was a child, he was a Krishna devotee, a really serious, he saw Krishna and played with Krishna and had Krishna manifest before him and so forth and so on. And that was his whole life. His whole spiritual life was as a devotee of Krishna. And he performed these really difficult and time-consuming and inconvenient acts of Krishna devotion, like getting up early in the morning and doing all this stuff. And he did that for his whole life. He did it every day, every day, every day. And after he came to Ramana, and after a time he went to Ramana, and he said, Ramana, what about I have this? What happened was, there came a day when he tried to do his devotion and couldn't. It just couldn't. I mean, it wasn't like he was opposed to it or anything. He just found he couldn't perform the acts. He couldn't speak the words. He couldn't say the things that had to be said. And he went to Ramana and said, Ramana, what is this, man? I no longer can perform my devotion to Krishna. And Ramana said to him, I see. And how did you get to Tiruvannamalai? And Papaji said, on a train. Okay. And how did you get from the train station to the ashram here? And he said, well, I rented a bull cart, whatever it was, right? Brought my baggage here and so forth. And he said, and where's the cart now? And Papaji said, well, the cart's gone. It brought me here and left. And the train? The same. The train dropped me off here and went on about its business. Ramana said it's the same with Krishna devotion. It's done with you. And I suspect that will happen with you too. Now, I have no contention with any of the things that you just said. I know nothing about them, and I have no contention with them. But I do know that they have not given us, this human species, an end to the insanity of the human species.
Right.
I know that. And I know that this looking has, in the case of thousands of people, brought an end to the insanity in their lives. So, what I would suggest to you is that you put that aside for a time and just look.
Okay. And
don't, you don't even have to put it aside. I suggest you do. You know, I think going on a kind of fast in this way is very useful. But even if you don't put it aside, don't conflate it with this looking.
Okay.
It has nothing whatsoever to do with this.
I've been able to listen to you there, like being able to keep those distinct and see how they actually do not in any way conflict and that the freedom is the freedom, the me is the me.
Right.
Yeah. And yes, so I have no problem there at all, and I very much appreciate your teachings, and they are reaching young people around me, and it's wonderful, and they're hearing it.
It's young people that we need, you know,
Yes.
really.
Yes, and it's speaking to them, and people with great resistance, and I really thank you for that, because I do care that, that the suffering
I know,
stop.
of course you do.
So thank you
You're very
very
welcome.
much.
Okay, that really is it. See what happens when I take the time limits off? Pretty soon we're here for hours. I hope nobody is too terribly fatigued by this long session. I will see you all tomorrow, same time, same bat channel, and I encourage you to look. And I encourage you also, for the time you're here, and you too, Barb, for the time we're here, put down the spiritual books for a while. Just for the time we're here. Concentrate on what you are doing, not on what other people have done, not even me. Concentrate on what you are doing, and look every chance you get. Every time it occurs to you to do so, see if you cannot do what we did this morning and bring your attention inward. The whole purpose of that exercise was not to make a thing of it, but to show you directly, mostly, the power you have to use your attention, to focus and move the beam of your attention, and what that feels like to do that. and then to move it to you. So, I love you all. That's the truth. I love you all. I am unbelievably, I couldn't possibly express how grateful I am to all of you, for coming to me, spending time with me, helping me see the way through to bring this to the rest of humanity. Okay?